I sat in my father Harold's mahogany office, staring at legal documents that stripped away the $110 million empire I spent 15 years building from nothing. He just told me he's handing everything to my younger brother Brandon instead because Brandon has 3 kids and I don't. Brandon, who never worked a real day in his life, who drove 2 businesses into bankruptcy, who still lives off family money at 38, will inherit my company simply because he reproduced. The injustice burned through my veins like poison. I couldn't breathe. The words my father just spoke hung in the air like toxic smoke, suffocating me from the inside out. "You cannot be serious," I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, I built this company from nothing. From a garage apartment with $50,000 you gave me 15 years ago. I turned that into $110 million in annual revenue. Me, not Brandon." Harold looked at me with those cold gray eyes I'd been seeing more often lately. Eyes that used to look at me with pride. Now they just looked tired and distant. "Susan Brandon has 3 children, 3 grandchildren, who need security, who need a legacy. He has a family to provide for. What do you have?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I stood up so fast my chair rolled backward and hit the bookshelf behind me. What do I have? I have 240 employees across 3 states who depend on the decisions I make every single day. I have contracts with Fortune 500 companies that trust me personally. I have proprietary software that revolutionized our entire industry. I have 15 years of my blood, sweat, and tears in every line of code, every contract, every client relationship. "That's all well and good," Harold said, arranging papers on his desk without looking at me. "But at the end of the day, what's the point of wealth without heirs? You're 35 years old, unmarried, and you've made it clear you don't want children. Brandon is thinking about the future, about family. That matters more than your career accomplishments." I felt dizzy. This couldn't be happening. My mother would never have allowed this. But she died 6 years ago, and without her voice to balance, his Harold had become someone I barely recognized. "I need to see a lawyer," I said, grabbing my purse. "There has to be something in the corporate structure that prevents this." "See whoever you want," Harold replied, finally looking up at me. "My lawyers have reviewed everything. I maintain 60% ownership through the trust structure I set up years ago. You have 35%, the employees have 5%. I have every legal right to designate my successor as CEO and transfer my shares to whomever I choose. The company isn't publicly traded, so there's no board to appeal to." My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. I called Patricia Gardner, my attorney, right there in front of him. "Patricia, I need to see you immediately. Emergency." 2 hours later, I sat in Patricia's downtown office, watching her review documents with increasing concern on her face. "Susan, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Your father structured everything perfectly. He owns 60% outright through a family trust. You own 35% as an individual shareholder. Legally, he can do exactly what he's threatening to do. Fighting this in court would take years, cost you millions in legal fees, and you'd probably lose anyway. So I just lose everything. 15 years of my life gone. You'll still own your 35%. You'll receive dividend distributions if the company remains profitable. But operational control, that will be Brandon's if your father follows through." I drove to Brandon's house in a daze. He lived in a sprawling colonial that family money bought for him after his second failed business venture. I found him exactly where I expected him to be at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, in his basement game room playing video games while his wife Amanda handled their 3 kids upstairs. "Susan." He actually seemed happy to see me pausing his game. "What brings you by?" "Don't pretend you don't know," I said, my voice hard. "Dad told me about his plan to make you CEO, to give you my company." Brandon's smile didn't falter. If anything, it grew wider. He set down his controller and stood up, stretching. "Your company? I think you mean Dad's company. He owns 60%, remember?" "I built it, Brandon. You've never worked a real job in your life. You bankrupted 2 businesses before you turned 30. What makes you think you can run a $110 million tech consulting firm? Family, Susan. That's what makes me qualified. I have 3 kids who need a future. You chose your career over having a family. Dad's just correcting the natural order of things. The smugness in his voice made my stomach turn, but then something in his expression shifted. Something calculating. Besides, he continued, Amanda and I have been planning this for over a year. We consulted lawyers, researched inheritance laws, helped Dad see what really matters. You were always his favorite until you made it clear you weren't going to give him grandkids. Amanda gave him 3. Priorities shift, Susan. I stared at my brother, seeing him clearly for the first time in years. This wasn't just Dad's decision. Brandon had orchestrated it, manipulated it, schemed for it. You deliberately turned him against me. I helped him see reality, Brandon corrected. Your little business accomplishments don't matter in the grand scheme of family legacy. I'm carrying on the family name. My kids will inherit something real. What will you leave behind? Awards magazine articles? Those don't love you back, Susan. I turned to leave, but Brandon's next words stopped me cold. Oh, and Susan, I've been meeting with your leadership team for 3 months now. Getting to know everyone, learning the business, making promises about the exciting new direction we'll take. Some of them already know about the transition. Dad wanted me prepared. The betrayal went deeper than I'd imagined. They'd been working behind my back for months, maybe longer, positioning Brandon to take over my company while I worked 80-hour weeks, completely unaware. 3 days later, Harold called an all-hands company meeting. I stood in the back of our largest conference room watching 240 faces turn toward the front as my father took the microphone. I want to thank you all for the incredible work you do every day, Harold began. This company has grown beyond my wildest dreams, and that's thanks to every single person in this room. I knew what was coming. My chest felt tight. As many of you know, I've been thinking about succession planning. I'm 72 years old, and it's time to think about the future. After careful consideration, I'm pleased to announce that Brandon Reynolds will be taking over as CEO effective in 30 days. The room went silent. Then whispers spread like wildfire. I watched my colleagues' faces, saw confusion, shock, and in some cases poorly concealed dismay. These were people I'd hired personally, trained, mentored, led through every challenge for 15 years. Susan will be transitioning to an advisory role, lending her expertise as we move forward. Brandon brings a fresh perspective and strong family values that will guide us into our next chapter. My face burned. An advisory role. Like I was being demoted in the company I built. Craig Morris, my VP of Operations, caught my eye from across the room. His expression was pure disbelief. After the meeting, Craig came straight to my office. "What just happened out there?" he asked, closing the door behind him. "You're the company. How can he just push you aside?" "Corporate structure," I said flatly. "Dad owns 60%. He can do whatever he wants." "This is insane. Susan, half the senior team, is already talking about resigning. We're loyal to you, not Brandon. Most of us barely know him." "Don't?" I said quickly. "Don't quit. You have families, mortgages, responsibilities. I'll figure something out." But I didn't figure anything out. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched my influence erode day by day. Brandon moved into an office down the hall. He started sitting in on meetings, offering suggestions that showed his complete lack of understanding of our business. In one executive meeting, he suggested cutting our research and development budget by 60% to boost short-term profits. "Brandon, our R&D is what keeps us competitive," I explained, trying to keep my voice level. "Our clients come to us because we're innovating. If we cut that budget, we'll lose our edge within 6 months." "I disagree," Brandon said confidently. "I think we're wasting money on pie-in-the-sky projects. We need to focus on what makes money now." Craig, sitting next to me, actually groaned out loud. I had to spend the next hour explaining to Brandon why his suggestion would destroy the company, all while he looked at me like I was being difficult. He wanted to offshore our customer service to save money, which would destroy the client relationships I'd spent years building. He proposed dropping our 2 biggest clients because they were lower margin, not understanding that they were also our most prestigious accounts that opened doors to other contracts. Every terrible decision I quietly had to undo or redirect. And every time I pushed back, Harold sided with Brandon. "Let him learn his way, Susan. You need to let go." Let go of 15 years of my life, of the company I'd built from absolutely nothing. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after the announcement. I arrived at 7 in the morning like always and swiped my badge at the entrance. The light flashed red. I tried again. Red. Again. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside," said the security guard. One I'd hired 2 years ago. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "What's going on? My badge isn't working." "Ma'am, your employment was terminated effective immediately. I have instructions to escort you to the lobby where your personal belongings have been boxed up." The words didn't make sense. Terminated. Not the advisory role they'd promised. Completely terminated. I stood there in the lobby. At 7:15 in the morning, staring at 3 cardboard boxes containing 15 years of my life. Photos, awards, personal files, a coffee mug my team gave me for my birthday that said "World's Best Boss." Harold wouldn't take my calls. Brandon didn't answer his phone. I had my attorney call their legal department. The response came 2 hours later in an email. "Susan Reynolds' employment has been terminated due to her continued undermining of the new leadership transition. Per her contract, she will receive 2 weeks of severance pay, which is the legally required minimum. Her 35% ownership stake remains intact. She will receive dividend distributions only if the company maintains profitability. She retains no operational control or authority." I sat in my car in the parking lot, watching employees arrive for work through my windshield. People I'd hired, trained, cared about. They were walking into my building to do the work I'd taught them while I'd been erased, escorted out by security like I'd done something wrong. My phone buzzed. A text from Craig. "What happened? They're saying you quit. That's not true, is it?" I couldn't even respond. I just drove home to my apartment, the one I'd lived in for 6 years, because I'd been too busy building a company to think about buying a house. I sat on my couch and stared at the wall for 4 hours. This was really happening. I'd lost everything. 3 months crawled by like a slow death. I monitored the company from the outside through contacts still inside who fed me information quietly. Brandon was running it into the ground exactly as I'd predicted. He lost 3 major clients in 10 weeks. 23 employees quit, including Craig Morris and 2 other senior VPs. Revenue dropped 18% in a single quarter. But Harold kept propping the company up with family money pumping in millions from his investment portfolio, refusing to admit he'd made a catastrophic mistake. I couldn't just sit back and watch my life's work die. I decided to do the only thing I knew how to do. Start over. I had about $400,000 in savings. Not the fortune I would have had if I'd stayed, but enough to try. I rented a small office space in a cheaper part of town. I started building new software using everything I'd learned, but creating something fresh, something that couldn't be claimed as derivative of my old company's intellectual property. I reached out to former employees who'd left Brandon's mismanagement. 4 of my best people agreed to join me. They were taking a risk, accepting lower salaries than they'd had before, but they believed in me. That meant everything. I named the new company Meridian Solutions. I worked 20-hour days fueled by rage and determination and caffeine. The first 6 weeks were brutal. We were building something from scratch with limited resources, no reputation in the market yet, and very little margin for error. But we were making progress. Real progress. I leveraged every relationship I'd built over 15 years, every contact, every client who'd valued working with me personally. Finally, 2 months in, I landed a meeting with a financial services firm I'd worked with at my old company. They were unhappy with Brandon's leadership. Their CTO, James, something I couldn't quite remember his last name, agreed to consider Meridian Solutions for a new contract. The proposal I put together was exceptional. I knew exactly what they needed because I'd been working with them for 8 years. The contract was worth $800,000. It would save my company, give us breathing room, prove we were viable. James called me on a Thursday afternoon. "Susan, your proposal is excellent. We're ready to move forward. Legal will send over the contracts tomorrow. We should be able to sign early next week." I hung up the phone and actually cried. Relief, validation, hope all crashed over me at once. My small team celebrated with cheap champagne in our modest office. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe the betrayal had been a blessing in disguise. A chance to start fresh, to build something entirely mine. That feeling lasted exactly 2 days. Monday morning, James called again. His voice was strained, uncomfortable. "Susan, I'm really sorry, but we've decided to go in a different direction." My stomach dropped. "What happened 2 days ago? You said we were signing this week." "I know, and I apologize for the change. The decision came from above me." "James, please. I need to understand. Did we do something wrong? Is the pricing too high? We can renegotiate." There was a long pause. Then he sighed. "Susan, this is going to sound crazy, but I got a call from Brandon Reynolds. He said there were ethical concerns about your business practices. He made some vague accusations about reliability and suggested there might be legal issues if we contracted with you. He implied working with you could damage our reputation." My bosses got nervous. I pushed back, but they wouldn't budge. "I'm sorry." After I hung up, I sat frozen at my desk. Brandon. He'd actively sabotaged me. He wasn't content with taking my company. He was going to make sure I could never rebuild. I called Brandon directly, something I'd sworn I wouldn't do. "Susan," he answered cheerfully. "How's the little startup going?" "You called James Richardson. You killed my contract." "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, Brandon." He told me. "You made accusations about my ethics, about legal problems that don't exist." Brandon laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, that. Yeah, I might have mentioned to a few people in the industry that you left your previous position under questionable circumstances. Just protecting the company's reputation, you understand. You're destroying me. I'm protecting what's mine. You think you can just start a competing company and poach our clients? Our employees? Not going to happen, Susan. I have Dad's money and your old company behind me. I have connections, resources, reputation. You have nothing. And if you try to compete with me, I'll bury you. Every potential client you approach, I'll get there first. Every employee you try to hire, I'll make sure they know you're unreliable. You should have just accepted your situation gracefully." He hung up. I sat there holding my dead phone, understanding with horrible clarity that this wasn't over. The fight wasn't over. Brandon was going to systematically destroy any chance I had at rebuilding. And that's exactly what he did. Over the next 6 weeks, Brandon personally called and sabotaged 2 more potential clients I'd been courting. He spread rumors in industry circles about my supposed ethical lapses. He used Harold's extensive connections to poison my reputation with people I'd never even met. I went from being respected in my industry to being viewed as a risk. Companies didn't want the drama. They didn't want Brandon's hostility. It was easier to just go with someone else. My savings drained. 400,000 became 300, then 200, then 100. Payroll for my 4 employees was eating through what remained. I couldn't land any significant contracts. Every door Brandon slammed in my face. 8 months after starting Meridian Solutions, I had to shut it down. I gathered my 4 employees, people who'd taken a chance on me, and told them I couldn't make payroll anymore. "I'm so sorry," I said, fighting tears. "You believed in me and I let you down." They were gracious about it, understanding even. But I saw the disappointment in their eyes. They had families to support. They needed jobs. My pride had cost them stability. I was $40,000 in debt now. I'd taken out loans to keep the business running those last 2 months, maxed out credit cards, trying to make it just 1 more month, just until the next potential contract that never materialized. I couldn't afford my apartment anymore. I moved into a tiny studio in a rough neighborhood for $800 a month. I sold my car and bought a 15-year-old sedan for $3,000. My wardrobe became a rotation of 6 outfits from discount stores. Everything I'd owned of value was gone. And the dividend distributions from my 35% ownership, the company was suddenly unprofitable under Brandon's management. Suspicious timing, but my attorney said there was nothing I could do about it without expensive litigation I couldn't afford. I was broken, erased. 10 months after being escorted out of my own company, I did something I swore I'd never do. I called Harold. "Dad, I need help," I said when he finally answered. "I'm asking for a loan. Just $20,000 to get back on my feet. I'll pay you back with interest. I just need something to survive on while I find work." "No." The word was cold, final. "Dad, please. I'm your daughter. I'm drowning here." You made your choices, Susan. Brandon made his. He chose family. You chose pride. You started a competing company, tried to poach our employees, undermine our client relationships. You brought this on yourself. That's not what happened. Brandon sabotaged me. He's been actively destroying any chance I have at rebuilding. I don't believe that. Brandon is focused on the company and his family. You're just bitter because you lost. I'm your daughter, I repeated, my voice breaking. Doesn't that mean anything? There was a pause. Then Harold said something that shattered whatever remained of my relationship with him. Daughters leave. They get married, take other names, build other lives. Sons carry on the family name. Brandon's children are my legacy. They'll carry the Reynolds name into the future. What are you, Susan? You're 35, unmarried, childless, and now jobless. What exactly are you contributing to this family's legacy? I couldn't speak. The words had knocked all the air from my lungs. I'm rewriting my will, Harold continued. Everything goes to Brandon. The family home, my investment portfolio, everything. You'll get nothing. Not $1. Maybe that will teach you that family loyalty matters more than selfish ambition. He hung up. I sat on the floor of my studio apartment and cried until I couldn't breathe. I'd been erased from my family completely. Not just the company. The family itself. My father had written me out of existence because I didn't have children, because I'd focused on building something instead of reproducing. The next day, my phone rang. Amanda. Susan, I heard about your conversation with Harold, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I just wanted to reach out. I don't need your pity, Amanda. It's not pity. I wanted you to know something. This whole situation, it didn't just happen. I made it happen. I sat up straighter. What? I've been working on this for 2 years, Susan. From the moment I realized you were Harold's favorite, that you'd probably inherit the majority of his wealth, and the company, I knew I had to do something. My children deserve that inheritance. Not you. You turned him against me. I helped him see reality. I made comments about your selfishness, your obsession with work, your refusal to prioritize family. I talked about how Brandon was the one giving him grandchildren, carrying on the family name. I was patient, strategic. It took time, but I convinced him that biological legacy matters more than business legacy. Why are you telling me this? Amanda laughed. Because you need to understand that you lost Susan, completely. You career women, you think you're so important, so accomplished. But at the end of the day, what matters is family. My children will have everything. Your company, Harold's wealth, the family home, everything. And you'll have nothing. That's justice. She hung up, and I heard her laughing before the line went dead. I broke that night. Completely broke. I cried for hours alone in my tiny studio apartment, surrounded by everything I had left, which fit in one room. 15 years of work gone, family relationships destroyed, financial stability obliterated, reputation ruined. I had $300 in my bank account. I'd applied for dozens of jobs, but my gap in employment and the rumors Brandon had spread made me virtually unhireable in my industry. I ended up taking a job at an electronics store in a strip mall, making $13 an hour helping customers pick out phones and laptops. Me, who'd built a $110 million company, wearing a blue polo shirt with a name tag, asking people if they'd like to add a protection plan. I considered giving up entirely. What was the point? They'd won. They'd taken everything and ground me into dust. 2 months into working retail, a customer came into the store on a Tuesday afternoon. He was looking at laptops, and I went over to help him. Hi, I'm Susan. Can I help you find what you're looking for today? The man looked up and his eyes widened. Susan Reynolds. I froze. Yes. Douglas Freeman. We worked together about 4 years ago when you were CEO of what was it called, Summit Tech Solutions. We had that massive contract for our security infrastructure. Douglas Freeman. I remembered him now. He'd been on the board of one of my largest clients, a regional bank chain. Mr. Freeman. Yes, I remember. How are you? He looked around the store then, back at me in my blue polo shirt. What are you doing here? Last I heard your company was thriving. The question was asked with genuine concern, not judgment. Something about his tone made me crack. Things changed, I said quietly. Long story. Are you on break? Can I buy you a coffee? An hour later, I'd told Douglas everything. The whole sordid story spilled out of me in a booth at a coffee shop next to the strip mall. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as I continued. That's appalling, he said when I finished. I knew Brandon had taken over, but I had no idea it was like that. He completely destroyed our relationship with your old company, by the way. We dropped the contract 6 months after he took over. His incompetence cost us 2 weeks of downtime during a critical period. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. Not your fault. But Susan, something about this doesn't sit right with me. I've been in business 40 years. The way you're describing the financial situation, the sudden unprofitability, the aggressive sabotage, it sounds like more than just a family dispute. What do you mean? I mean, it sounds like fraud, or at least financial irregularities worth investigating. Have you looked into the company's books since they pushed you out? I don't have access anymore. You own 35%. That makes you a shareholder. You have rights, including the right to inspect financial records. He pulled out his phone. I know someone who could help. A forensic accountant specializes in corporate fraud. She does pro bono work sometimes for people who've been wronged. Let me call her. 3 days later, I met Laura Phillips in her downtown office. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and no nonsense. Douglas filled me in on the basic situation, she said. I looked into your old company's public filings. Susan, there are red flags everywhere. Unusual cash flows, payments to entities. I can't readily identify expenses that don't match industry standards for a company of that size. What does that mean? It means something hinky is going on with the money. As a 35% shareholder, you have the right to request detailed financial documentation. They have to provide it legally, though they'll probably fight you on it. If you want me to dig into this, I will. But I need to warn you, if we find what I think we might find, this could get ugly. How ugly? Criminal charges, ugly. FBI investigation, ugly. Prison time, ugly. I thought about Harold's cold voice on the phone. Brandon's smug smile. Amanda's cruel laughter. They'd destroyed my life. They'd taken everything from me and ground me into dust. And now Laura was suggesting they might have been stealing on top of it. Do it, I said. Whatever you find, I want to know. Laura got to work. Using my shareholder rights, she formally requested financial documents. Brandon's lawyers tried to stall, but legally, they had to comply. It took 6 weeks of back-and-forth threats of court action and persistent pressure, but eventually boxes of financial records arrived. Laura spent another month analyzing everything with her team. I kept working at the electronics store, kept living in my studio apartment, kept existing in the ruins of my life. But now I had something I hadn't had in over a year. Hope. When Laura called me back into her office, her expression told me everything before she even spoke. Susan, they've been systematically looting the company. Harold and Brandon have stolen approximately $7 million over the past 13 months. I sat down hard. How? Fraudulent contracts with shell companies they control. Fake consulting fees. Payments to vendors that don't actually exist. They've been transferring money out through a complex network designed to hide the theft. And Amanda is involved too. She's been receiving payments through a marketing consultancy that has no employees, no clients, and no actual services rendered. It's pure embezzlement. $7 million. Give or take. This is criminal fraud, Susan. Wire fraud, money laundering, embezzlement. Federal crimes. If we take this to the authorities, they could all go to prison. I stared at the financial documents spread across Laura's conference table. Evidence of systematic theft from the company I'd built. They hadn't just taken it from me. They'd been stealing from it. What are my options? You could go to the FBI, let them handle it. There would be a criminal investigation, probably. Prosecutions. That takes time, years potentially. But they'd likely face serious prison sentences. And the company would probably be seized as part of the criminal proceedings, then sold off to pay restitution. Your employees would lose their jobs, but justice would be served. Or you could use this as leverage in a civil case. Force them to return what they stole, maybe get the company back, avoid the criminal system, faster resolution, but less punishment for them. I thought about Harold telling me I wasn't part of the family legacy, Brandon laughing while he destroyed my attempts to rebuild, Amanda bragging about manipulating everything. $7 million stolen from a company I'd built from nothing. I want them in prison, I said. They didn't just steal money. They stole my life, my reputation, my future. They tried to erase me. I want justice. Douglas, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up. Susan, if you do this, if you go to the FBI, I want you to know I'll help you rebuild afterward. Once the truth comes out, your reputation will be restored. I'll invest in whatever you want to start next. You deserve that much. Laura nodded. I'll help you put together the evidence package. But Susan, understand this will change everything. Your father, your brother, your sister-in-law, they'll all know you're the one who turned them in. Your family will never forgive you. They already erased me from the family, I said quietly. I'm just returning the favor. I met with FBI Special Agent Carlos Rivera on a Thursday morning in a nondescript federal building downtown. Laura came with me carrying 14 months of financial evidence in meticulous detail. Agent Rivera was in his 40s, serious but not unkind. He listened as I told the story, then spent 2 hours reviewing the documents Laura had prepared. This is excellent work, he finally said. Very thorough. Miss Reynolds, I'm going to open a formal investigation. I need to warn you this won't be fast, and it will likely get ugly. These are your family members. They'll know you're the one who brought this to us. I understand. And you're prepared for that. They destroyed me first. I'm just making sure they face consequences. Agent Rivera nodded. We'll be in touch. Don't discuss this with anyone and don't contact the subjects of the investigation. Let us handle it from here. Over the next 8 weeks, I watched from a distance as the FBI worked. I went to my retail job, came home to my studio apartment, lived my small, diminished life. But underneath, I knew something big was building. Then Brandon called me. Susan, his voice was panicked. Dad and I are being investigated by the FBI for fraud. They're asking questions about the company finances, about payments to consultants, about shell companies. This is crazy. It's some kind of mistake. I kept my voice neutral. That sounds serious, Brandon. Do you know anything about this? Have they contacted you? Why would they contact me? I haven't been involved with the company for over a year. I don't know. I just thought maybe since you're still technically a shareholder. He paused. Susan, I'm scared. They're talking about serious charges. Can you help me? Can you tell them this is all a misunderstanding? I almost laughed. After everything he'd done, he was asking me for help. I don't think I can help you, Brandon. If the FBI is investigating, they must have found something. But it's not what they think. The money we were trying to protect the company's assets, and Dad was moving things around for tax purposes, and I didn't really understand what I was signing. He was panicking already, creating excuses already, trying to minimize his involvement. You should probably get a good lawyer, Brandon. Susan, please. I know things got ugly between us, but we're family. You wouldn't let them send me to prison, would you? Family, I repeated softly. That's interesting. Because I remember Dad telling me that daughters don't matter, that I wasn't part of the family legacy. I remember you laughing while you sabotaged my attempts to rebuild my life. I remember Amanda bragging about manipulating everything. So, tell me, Brandon, why should I care what happens to you now? There was a long silence. It was you, he whispered. You gave them the evidence. You stole $7 million, Brandon, from a company I built. Did you really think there would be no consequences? You vindictive bitch. You're destroying our family. No, you destroyed it. I'm just making sure everyone knows what you did. He hung up. I sat on my apartment floor, shaking, but also feeling something I hadn't felt in over a year. Power. For the first time since this nightmare began, I had power over my own story. 3 days later, the FBI raided both the company offices and the family home simultaneously. They seized computers, files, bank records, everything. The local news covered it that evening. A former prominent tech company, and its leaders under investigation for embezzlement and fraud. Harold called me that night. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "You traitor!" he was screaming. "You did this! You turned us in to the FBI. You stole $7 million, Dad. You committed fraud. I just made sure the right people found out. We're your family. How could you do this to your own family?" "Family," I said, my voice cold and calm. "You mean the family that erased me? The one that took everything I built and gave it to someone incompetent because he had kids? The one that told me I wasn't part of the legacy? That family? We could have worked this out privately. Now they're talking about prison, Susan. Federal prison. Is that what you want, your father in prison?" What I wanted was basic decency, basic respect, basic fairness. You couldn't give me that. "So, yes, Dad. I want you in prison. I want Brandon in prison. I want Amanda in prison. You all deserve it. I'll cut you off completely. You'll never get a penny of my money." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You already did that, remember? You rewrote your will. I was already getting nothing. So what exactly are you threatening me with?" Harold's voice broke then. "Susan, please. I'm begging you. Call off the investigation. Tell them it was a mistake. I'll give you the company back. 50%. 60%. Whatever you want." "It's too late, Dad. The FBI doesn't work for me. They have the evidence. What happens now is out of my hands. You taught me that family comes first. So that's exactly what I did. I protected the only family that mattered, the 240 employees you and Brandon were stealing from." I hung up on him. My hands were shaking, but I felt clear-headed for the first time in forever. 2 days later, Brandon showed up at my apartment. I opened the door to find him standing there crying. "Please, Susan, please help me. Amanda is threatening divorce. My kids are asking why the FBI came to our house. I could face 20 years in prison. 20 years. I'll miss watching my kids grow up. I'll lose everything." I recorded the conversation on my phone, something Laura had told me to do if any of them contacted me. "You want me to testify it was all a misunderstanding?" I asked. "Yes, please. I'll do anything. I'll give you back the company. 50%, 60%, whatever you want. I'll tell everyone you were the real leader all along. I'll make it right." "It was your idea, wasn't it? The embezzlement." No, it was Dad's. He said we needed to protect assets, that the company was ours by right anyway, that moving money around was just smart business. But you knew it was fraud. I didn't really understand. Amanda handled a lot of the financial stuff. She set up the shell companies. I just signed where they told me to sign. So you're blaming Amanda now? I'm not blaming anyone, I'm just saying it wasn't my idea. Please, Susan. For my kids. They need their father. Your kids needed a father who wasn't a criminal. You should have thought about them before you stole millions of dollars. I closed the door while he was still begging. I turned the recording over to Agent Rivera the next day. 3 months after I first walked into the FBI office, the indictments came down. Harold Reynolds, Brandon Reynolds, and Amanda Reynolds, all charged with wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and conspiracy. The total amount stolen $7.3 million. The local business community reacted with shock. My old employees reached out to me privately thanking me. Many of them would have lost their pensions if the fraud had continued unchecked. The company went into federal receivership. It would be sold to pay back what was stolen and to satisfy creditors. Everything Harold and Brandon had built on my foundation was coming down. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. This wasn't victory yet, this was just the beginning of justice. The trial took place 9 months after the arrests. Federal prosecutors had built an overwhelming case. I testified for 6 hours, over 2 days, calmly and factually describing how I'd built the company, how they'd taken it, how I'd discovered the fraud. The defense attorneys tried to paint me as vengeful, as someone who'd manufactured evidence because I was bitter about losing control. But the evidence was too clear. Bank records, emails, shell company, formation documents, testimony from other employees who'd witnessed suspicious transactions. The jury deliberated for 14 hours. Guilty on all counts for all 3 defendants. At sentencing 2 months later, the judge was harsh. Harold received 12 years in federal prison. Brandon got 10, Amanda got 7. The The court ordered full restitution of $7.3 million plus additional fines. All assets would be seized, including the family home worth $3 million, investment accounts, everything. I sat in the courtroom watching Harold stand before the judge looking decades older than his 73 years. He never looked at me. Not once during the entire trial. Brandon cried during his sentencing. Amanda stared straight ahead, her face a mask. When it was over, I walked out of the courthouse into cool autumn air. Laura and Douglas were waiting for me. "It's done," Laura said quietly. "It's done," I repeated. But there was still one more thing to handle. The company in receivership was being prepared for sale. As a 35% shareholder, I had certain rights in that sale. Douglas had put together an investment group. They made an offer to purchase the company out of bankruptcy at a significant discount. The federal receivers approved it as the best available offer that would ensure employee retention and repayment of creditors. The deal gave Douglas's investment group 40% ownership. I would have 50% using my existing 35% stake plus purchasing an additional 15%. The employees would keep 10% through an employee stock ownership plan. I was the CEO again. But it wasn't Summit Tech Solutions anymore. We renamed it Horizon Tech Solutions, a new beginning. My former employees, the ones who'd survived Brandon's mismanagement and hadn't found other jobs yet, came back. Over the course of 6 months, we rebuilt. I personally called every client who'd left during Brandon's tenure. This is Susan Reynolds. Yes, the same Susan who founded the company 15 years ago. I'm calling to let you know I'm back as CEO. The previous management is no longer with the company for reasons you may have seen in the news. I'd like an opportunity to earn back your trust and your business. Some hung up on me, but many listened, and several agreed to give us another chance. The business community loves a comeback story, especially one involving justice being served. Within 6 months, Horizon Tech Solutions was profitable again. Not at the $110 million level yet, but we were at $40 million in annual revenue and growing. Clients were returning. We were hiring. The company that had been dying under Brandon's mismanagement was alive again. A business magazine ran a feature story, The CEO Who Exposed Family Fraud and Rebuilt Her Empire. The article included interviews with employees, clients, even Agent Rivera commenting on the unusual case. My reputation was restored. Better than restored. I was seen as someone who'd stood up for what was right, even when it cost her everything, even when it meant turning in her own family. I moved into a nice apartment in a good neighborhood. Not as lavish as I might have chosen years ago, but comfortable. I'd learned the difference between what I needed and what I'd thought I needed. I started dating someone. Thomas owned a bookstore downtown, had kind eyes and steady hands, and had no interest in corporate drama. He knew my story, had read the articles, and his only comment was, "You did what you had to do." That takes real strength. I was learning to trust again, slowly, carefully, but learning. 2 years after the sentencing, I received a letter from Harold. He was in a federal prison in Pennsylvania. The letter said he was dying. Cancer. He had maybe 3 months left. He wanted to see me one last time. I debated for a week. Part of me wanted to refuse to let him die alone the way he'd left me alone when I needed help. But another part of me knew I needed closure. I drove to the prison on a Saturday morning. They brought Harold into the visiting room in a wheelchair. He'd lost at least 50 pounds. His skin had a grayish cast. He looked ancient and fragile. "Susan," his voice was weak. "Thank you for coming." "I almost didn't. I wouldn't have blamed you." He coughed a wet, rattling sound. "I wanted to apologize. I was wrong. About everything. The company, Brandon, what I said about family and legacy. I was a foolish old man who thought bloodline mattered more than character. You destroyed my life, Dad. I know, and I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to hear it. You built something extraordinary. I should have recognized that. I should have been proud of you, not resentful that you didn't fit my narrow definition of family success." Tears ran down his hollow cheeks. He looked pitiful. Part of me wanted to comfort him. The daughter I'd been would have forgiven him instantly. But I wasn't that daughter anymore. "I forgive you," I said finally. "Not for you, for me. Because I don't want to carry this anger anymore. But I'll never forget what you did. I'll never forget how you chose Brandon over me because he had kids. How you told me I didn't matter because I was a daughter, not a son. Those words are seared into me. I was wrong. Yes, you were. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then I stood up. I hope your last months are peaceful, Dad. I really do. But I won't be visiting again. I understand. He looked up at me. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Of what you rebuilt. Of your strength. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. I walked out of that prison and never looked back. Harold died 3 weeks later. I didn't attend the funeral. Brandon and Amanda were still in prison and couldn't attend either. I heard through the grapevine that it was a small service, maybe 20 people. I sent flowers. That seemed like enough. 5 years after the day Harold told me he was handing my company to Brandon, I stood at a podium in front of 150 employees at Horizon Tech Solutions' anniversary celebration. The company was thriving. We'd just closed our fiscal year at $90 million in annual revenue. Not quite the $110 million I'd achieved before, but we were growing steadily, sustainably. More importantly, we were growing the right way. Built on actual merit, actual relationships, actual value. 5 years ago, I said to the gathered faces this company was dying. It was being stolen from, mismanaged, and destroyed. Many of you were there. You lived through that difficult time. Some of you left and came back when we rebuilt. All of you made the choice to believe that we could create something better. I looked around the room. Faces I'd known for years. Faces I'd hired in the last few months, all of them part of something we'd built together. I want to announce something today. We're implementing a new profit-sharing program. Every employee, from entry-level to executive, will receive a percentage of annual profits. Because this company doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all of us. We build it together, we should benefit from it together. The applause was genuine, enthusiastic. Craig Morris, back as my VP of Operations, gave me a thumbs up from the side of the room. After the event, I sat in my office alone for a few minutes. On my desk was a photo of my team from last year's company retreat. Next to it, a small plaque one of my employees had given me that said, "Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge." I thought about Harold dying in prison, finally admitting he'd been wrong. I thought about Brandon still serving his sentence, his kids growing up with their father behind bars. I thought about Amanda, released after 5 years, now working as a cashier somewhere, her grand plans for her children's inheritance reduced to nothing. I'd won. But not in the way I'd initially wanted. I didn't win by keeping what I'd built the first time. I won by building something better the second time. Something based on truth and fairness and merit instead of manipulation and theft. The lesson I'd learned, the one I wish someone had told me years ago: you can't choose your blood family, but you can absolutely choose your real family. Real family are the people who support you, who believe in you, who stand by you when everything falls apart. Real family are the employees who came back to work with you after you'd lost everything. The friends like Douglas and Laura who helped you when you had nothing to offer in return. The partner like Thomas who loves you for who you are, not what you've accomplished. Merit matters more than biology. Always. Success built on substance lasts. Success built on manipulation and theft crumbles. I'd built my empire twice now. The second time was harder, required more sacrifice, more pain, more struggle. But it was also stronger because it was built on truth. They tried to destroy me because I didn't fit their definition of family, because I chose to build something instead of simply reproducing, because I was a daughter instead of a son. But in trying to erase me, they revealed who they truly were, and I used that truth to build something better than they could ever have imagined. I won. Not just the company back. I won my life back. I won my self-respect back. I won the knowledge that I could survive the worst betrayal imaginable and come out stronger on the other side. That's a victory they can never take away. That's a victory that matters. Looking back now, I realize the greatest gift they gave me was forcing me to discover my own strength. I thought I was strong when I built the first company. But that was easy strength, untested strength, the strength of someone who'd never really failed. Real strength is getting up after you've lost everything. Real strength is starting over with nothing. Real strength is facing down the people who destroyed you and refusing to let them win. Real strength is choosing justice over family loyalty, truth over comfortable lies. I have that strength now. And nobody, no matter how much they might want to, can ever take that away from me. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? Have you ever been betrayed by the people who should have protected you? How did you find the strength to rebuild? I love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about your own definition of family and success, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about real people facing real challenges and finding their way through, and share this with someone who might need to hear that they can survive betrayal and come back stronger. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that no matter how dark things get, no matter how completely you think you've lost, there's always a way forward. Sometimes the people who try to bury you don't realize they're actually planting seeds. Seeds that will grow into something stronger and more beautiful than what came before. Take care of yourselves. Choose your family wisely. And never, ever let anyone convince you that your worth is determined by someone else's narrow definition of success. Until next time,